My name is Emily Hurley, and I'll be doing my informative speech on Mary Stuart, also known as Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary was born December 8th, 1542, and at only 6 days old, her father, King James V, died, and she became ruler of Scotland. At 6 months old, she entered into her first marriage contract with England. She was supposed to marry Prince Edward, but the contract was later resolved by Scotland because it wasn't in their best interest. A few years later, she entered into her second marriage contract that ended up sticking, and she was to be engaged to the Dauphin of France, Francis II. Because of this marriage contract and because of Scotland being ruled by regents and the wars going on in Scotland, it was the best for her to be raised in France. So she left Scotland at 5 years old and lived in a nunnery for 13 years in France, and she learned all of her school subjects, languages, instruments, and everything she needed to know to be a ruler of not one but two countries while she was there. And in 1548, she married Francis. 1 year later, King Henry died, and she became Queen Consort of France. She did not go for the crown matrimony, which would have made her just the regular Queen of France. She only was a queen consort. She got to participate and, rule, but once Francis died, she no longer could be queen anymore. During her rule of France, she decided to claim her sovereignty over the English throne. She believed that she was the rightful heir to the English throne over her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, and that made Elizabeth really unhappy. They did not get along for quite a long time. And unfortunately, her and Francis could never produce an heir, and he later died from an inner ear infection, which led to a brain abscess in 1561. So the crown decided it had to be passed down to Charles, Francis's younger brother, and she had to leave and go back to France. Mary is a very strong Roman Catholic, and her country had become more Protestant, and even her half-brother was kind of the leader of the Protestants, which she kept as her main advisory. But Scotland became very hostile towards Mary because of their differences in religion. But she decided to get married again. She married her second husband, Henry Stuart, which was also her half-cousin. That's gross, but, that was okay back then. And they had a son. His name is James. And later, unfortunately, Henry Stuart was actually murdered by a man named James Hepburn. He was later acquitted for that murder, and then Mary married him. And so James Hepburn became Mary's third husband. So that was kind of odd, but it worked out for her. And then later, James Hepburn actually died, but all three of Mary's husbands died on her. And then Protestants eventually drove Mary out of the country, and so she had to abdicate her throne, and her son, James, became king. She ran to her cousin, Queen Elizabeth, for protection, but Elizabeth didn't really feel right about this. She still felt threatened over Mary believing that she should be the rightful heir to the English throne. So she threw Mary into prison for 13 years, and after 13 years, she decided to behead her for treason. Mary was such an influential historical figure. She had so much more happening in her life than I could possibly tell in 4 minutes, but she was so influential that she's had a whole TV show about her and a movie about how much drama and romance was in her life. She ruled not one but two countries. But I'd like to thank historicuk.com and history.com for a lot of the information I had for my speech.